All right, Mel, we're just talking about things in general as far as Cal State Fullerton, the athletics. And obviously, about a month ago, Gene Murphy passed away, longtime football coach. To me, one of the things that really kind of hit me is when you have 1,000 people show up at your memorial. And that wasn't just about Gene Murphy, the person. It was just pretty much a testament to everything that he did as a coach. Can you talk about when you first got here in 1981, just a lot of things that you saw as far as Gene Murphy did, as far as the Cal State Fullerton football program, and really what it meant in those 11 years that you were able to work for him?
Well, he was the first coach I ran into, literally. I got hired on like August 15th. They said the good news is you got the job. The bad news is you got a football game at home on the stadium we just built in 3 weeks. And there was a media day. Actually, I went to the media day before I got hired and went with Gene and met him in a car. And here's this guy from North Dakota I never heard of. And at the time, Hal Scherbeck at Fullerton College was the favorite to get the job. So he had a couple strikes against him right away. But he just wowed the community. He hired a staff of people and they just went for it. They didn't know anything had happened bad or good before them. They didn't get a lot of resources. And it kind of set the tone for us against them or working with limited resources. And he was a people person, very organized, and for media-wise, fantastic to work with. And just the history of his staff, what they went on to do, what his players went on to do. And in fact, I used it for his eulogy, the fact that a lot of football coaches don't know the names of all their players, especially the lesser lights on the roster. Well, Gene knew all his players, knew their kids' names, and he could get involved on a personal level, yet still was maintaining discipline.
The one constant with Cal State Fullerton has always been, that you're not going to have the same resources as perhaps other schools in Southern California. But people forget there was a lot of great history with football. When you go back to 1983 and 84, the strong seasons that Cal State Fullerton had, we know the whole, you could talk a little bit about what happened with the Freedom Bowl, but when you had a player like Damon Allen, I mean, you saw some really good football here at Fullerton.
Well, I go back to the 1984 College World Series baseball to start with a football note, but we were playing Michigan, Arizona State, Oklahoma State, Texas. I said, God, good thing we're not playing them in football. Well, lo and behold, a couple months later, we could have beaten them in football in 1984 with the kind of players we had. I think, I last counted, I think there was 14 players from that team went to pro football. Some in the NFL, some in the CFL, the USFL was going at that time. So on a given day, they could have played with anybody in the country. In fact, Iowa backed out of the Freedom Bowl. That's another story. But it started with 80, 81, 82 recruiting. They kind of bit the bullet and brought in some freshmen, and that team got good. Prop 48 kind of killed the idea, though. They were bringing in athletes, marginal students, gave them a year as a red shirt on scholarship. That was the key to make it or break it academically. And well, at that particular time, most of them made it, and they turned out to be pretty good athletes. Well, Prop 48 got changed. They said you can come in as a freshman, but you cannot be on scholarship. Well, that took the incentive away for a lot of carrots. So, but yeah, that series there, 83, 84, won league championships, went to a bowl game. Then the people forget 85 to 89, we were second place every year but one. The problem was we had these little non-conference scores that would pop up on ESPN on the weekend. 56 to 12, I think it was at LSU, and 60-something to nothing at Florida. And yet, if you look at all those games, next week we won because Gene basically, he called them body bag games. He kind of threw in the towel. We ran Ronnie Barber, the starting quarterback at Florida, 2 series and got him out of there so he wouldn't get hurt. The game plan was run the shot clock or the game clock down every play to shorten the game. So he was playing those games just not to get killed, and then he was preparing the team for next week, and at our level we could win.
Were there any players, especially on the football side, that you really were like, wow, this is a good player? I mean, like I said, you mentioned Damon Allen. We talk about Mike Pringle, Mark Collins, the DB who went on to play for the Super Bowl New York Giants. I mean, were there players that you could see that, yeah, they were going to get to that next level?
Well, Darren Gilbert sticks out as an offensive lineman. You don't focus on him too much, but he was 6'5", like 260, and had feet of a dancer, so he could really move around. He was a second-round pick. Mark Collins was pretty obvious just because his physical ability. His senior year, he only had a couple interceptions after a bunch of his first 3 years because teams quit throwing at him. It's like the first time down on the field, they would try to test him and say, oh yeah, he's as good as we thought he was. So he didn't get a lot of stats, so he became a punt returner and ran some kicks back, and he was physically outstanding. Damon was not physically outstanding. You looked at him, he's your size. I think we listed him 180 or something like that. He was probably 155, maybe 6'1". Not the prototypical NFL quarterback, but he went to CFL and did great. The other player that really stands out was John Nevins, a linebacker, who just was the all-time hardest hitter I've ever seen. He hit a tight end at Colorado State. You thought the guy was going to die. I mean, he just exploded. A guy named Kelly McGregor, who went on to own a pro team. I mean, the guy survived and did well. But Nevins, they call him scrap iron because he had a bullet in his leg, and he was at the funeral too. And he looked pretty much the same, and maybe 20, 30 pounds heavier. But he was a guy. I never saw a guy hit people so well. At kickoffs, he'd pancake somebody on the other team coming down the field. If he picked you out, you're in trouble.
The term that I always liked hearing Coach Murphy use was squirrel derby. Can you explain what squirrel derby meant?
Well, now they call it gadgets or trick plays. I mean, he always put in something, partly for keeping the mood light at practice, give the guys something to do, and we were very successful with the plays. That made him encourage them even more, and it made the other team spend some time on practice because all these things in those days showed up on film. So like every extra point, we did the swinging gate, which is a play I saw in junior high school where everybody lines up on the side, and if the defense doesn't go over there, the snapper snaps the ball and you take off, and it's like a swinging gate. Everyone just turns and blocks. We ran that all the time and had the variations of that. So it was just a fun thing to do, and fun thing to do. And I think Gene was an ex-quarterback, so he enjoyed the trickery.
One of the toughest things right now is you really start seeing this kind of chasm between the haves and the have-nots, especially when it comes to college football. And whether or not football comes back to Cal State Fullerton at some point, I don't think anybody will really know at that time. But one of the things you also knew about Coach Murphy is you could go back and look at the coaching tree. I mean, the coaches that were here at Cal State Fullerton, you're talking about guys that went on to be coordinators in the NFL. I mean, there was a lot of talent that came through. And I think one of the things that Gene was able to nurture was that ability to have his coaches experiment, and he gave them things to do, and he allowed them to grow as coaches. And I think that's where you saw at the end where a lot of coaches had so much respect for what Gene represented.
Well, as of early January, we had 3 ex-NFL head coaches, which is a testament to something. Steve Mariucci with the 49ers and the Lions, and then Tom Cable and Hugh Jackson, I guess, got a year each under the, well, one with Al Davis and one just with the Raiders. Yeah, he gave them the head, and like I talked about when they first came in here in 1980, they took a map of Fullerton and divided it up. Harbor Boulevard and Orangethorpe was the center point. There's 4 quadrants, and each coach had, maybe they went in pairs. They went door to door, say, hey, we're from Cal State Fullerton, we need some help, what can you do? And the number 1 response they got was no one ever asked before, and they got trade out. They got some things we didn't need, lumber, and well, I guess we did need the lumber sometimes, but they got people to advertise in the program, a trade out, they give them an ad in the program for something that would help the program, whether it be food, travel, I don't know, some bizarre thing showed up, picture framing. I guess that can come in handy too. But then, yeah, the coordinators and then Gene would follow them too. And his as the tree grew, I think he got more respect from NFL types. So they would call, Gene had a background people don't know too much about in the Canadian Football League. That's where he made a lot of his contacts. And I've never seen anyone where everywhere we went in the country, he knew somebody. So he had this network. So once the word got out that he had some good assistants, if he recommended you, it was almost a ticket to a better job in terms of money and resources.
One of the things I think I always liked about Coach Murphy is that you never felt, especially back in the late 80s and the early 90s, is that you never felt like football was at this level above everybody else. I still remember, being a lot younger, being as a student, and we'd have these barbecues where you'd have the whole football coaching staff would be there, but literally every other head coach from the athletic department would be there. And it really felt like a family. And Gene had a lot to do with that, to embrace everybody and treat everybody the same. And I think that was why the athletic department got along so well together at that time. And again, I think that's more a testament to Gene. What did you see from that?
Well, I think it's an overused phrase, a family atmosphere, but it really was in those days. And I know, again, being on the visiting end of other campuses, there's schools that the football coach and the basketball coach don't even talk to each other, much less the baseball coach. He's just a blip on his radar. No one even cares about him too much. Whereas Fullerton, baseball was really the sport that was the most successful. Augie Garrido, national attention. Gene came in with football, like you're saying. Football could have been the prima donna sport, but it wasn't. And I think just because, he was a people person, number 1, and 2, his program had as little as everyone else, so they could commiserate. And he would send his team, they'd go watch a volleyball match after a practice or something like that. So he encourages players to get involved in the other sports.
You'd mentioned a little bit about basketball and kind of moving on to that a little bit. By the time you got here in '81, they had just come off of that Elite 8 appearance with Bobby Dye in 1978, and there's a lot of fans that really have a lot of fond memories about basketball. Your earliest really view as success was around 1984 when you had Leon Wood, who went on to play with the Olympic team. What was it like watching Leon play?
My first eye shot I got of Leon Wood was at Loyola Marymount, the 80-81 season, which we ended up 4-23, was his redshirt season, George McCorn's first year. We're playing at LMU, this before Gersten Pavilion, just their little campus gym. And at halftime, Leon walks out and starts shooting in street clothes. And he makes 20-footers, 22-footers, 23-footers. He shoots like 90%. I'm watching this guy shoot. I go, he's in street clothes. This guy's going to be something next year. And it turned out he was. Actually, he was the all-time leading scorer until Bobby Brown broke his record in 4 years to Leon's 3. But I don't recall Leon ever making a bad passing decision. Now, he made some bad passes because we played up-tempo, and you make hundreds of passes during the season. But he knew how to run a fast break. And with Ricky Mixon one couple years and Gary Davis another year, that's what I remember most, just how he could distribute the ball. He had great vertical speed. He didn't have great lateral quickness, and that was kind of his downfall in the NFL or in the NBA, other than going to Philadelphia, which was a half-court team, and a guy named Charles Barkley was drafted in the first round ahead of him, so he kind of got the focus. But Leon just as a person, if I had to pick out one favorite athlete, John would never pick out a favorite person, but if he was around Leon, he might have changed his attitude. Because Leon was kind of like Gene Murphy. He'd referee, he'd be a linesman, he'd referee intramural games, he'd be a linesman at the volleyball matches. He was a gym rat when basketball season, he was a gym rat in volleyball season, and anything else that was going on, gymnastics. He dated a softball player, so he was totally involved in the program. And George McCorn was the beauty of a coach too. He had a reputation of being a recruiter, and he comes in, and I came in with him and Gene Murphy the same year, and there was an empty cupboard. Dave Ware, transferred from Fresno State, had 1 year of eligibility. He's now more famous for being the father of the UCLA Twins, but he was our only legitimate Division I player that first year. We won 4 games, and it had Leon in the wings, so you knew what was coming. And George started recruiting, and we had some great success there for about 6-7 years.
One thing, you can still go on the YouTube and see Wayne Williams hitting that 40-footer against UNLV that had Stacey Augmon and Larry Johnson, and those were some fun teams to watch because everybody knew UNLV at the time. They won the national championship, and you saw Wayne Williams and Cedric Ceballos and kind of see the transition. What did you really think overall when you saw basketball? Because you went from 1981, and then at some point we'll talk about what happened. It took you 27 years to finally get to the big dance, but you always were able to see a couple players. Were there any special memories that you remember while watching basketball? And everybody always talks about wins, but maybe there were just some special moments that you remember on the road.
Some of our travel exploits were, I try to forget most of those. Tony Neal, who was part of the Leon's team, he stands out. His career rebounding record is about to get broken by the Long Beach guy any time now, over 1,000. He was like 6'5", but his arms were like 6'11" or something like that. And he pursued rebounds. He wasn't a very good shooter, wasn't much of a scorer, but was a solid player for 4 years. And just his tenacity, a guy undersized. People long forget that I played basketball at Cal State Fullerton as a freshman. A very forgettable career. We were horrible. Well, we weren't horrible, but that team, one guy stayed around to play varsity. This Alex O'Malley was the varsity coach. So we saw the program in its early years. Bobby Dye, I saw him pretty much on TV. I missed all that, the Cinderella team that you talked about in '78. And then when he left and the program was disarray, so it started all over with George McCorn. So there are some personalities on the team. If you give me some time to think, I could probably think of something better.
There really was, but it was a little bit of a golden age because at that point, the Big West Conference, after changing from the PCAA, they were number 3 on the Big Monday triple header. So you had, Bill Mulligan over at Irvine, who was, a big, good friend of Gene Murphy. You had Jerry Pym over at UC Santa Barbara. Long Beach State was good. I mean, you really had some quality basketball players and a lot of players from other schools that ended up playing in the NBA.
Yeah, it was a different level of the league, truthfully. UNLV brought the level up in the national caliber, and that one game where we beat them in their gym, and actually it wasn't that much of a fluke. I mean, going into the game, we kind of were confident because we played them well in Las Vegas. Now we had them in Titan Gym, and if you look at the stats, we didn't do anything phenomenal. Leon had an average game, and we beat them by 8, and they made some free throws at the end to make it even that close. Fresno State, when I first got this school in 1980, that's Boyd Grant era. That kind of started the level up, and then Tarkanian brought it in. And the thing with McCorn and Mulligan was fun too, because they they were friends and yet enemy. They're totally different mentalities and everything. It was interesting to see them go head to head. Actually, my first Cal State Fullerton experience was I was at a media luncheon. This would be the spring of '80, not knowing I was going to be working here. And they introduced the new head coach at Cal State Fullerton, George McCorn. And he's up there, he's basically recruiting Kevin McGee from the podium, who had verbally agreed to go to Irvine. And I didn't know anything about who these players were, but I think after looking back, I go, man, that guy, he's a tenacious recruiter. McGee's is committed, he's done everything to sign the letter, and George is still trying to recruit him via this media luncheon someplace in Anaheim. So there were some personalities in those days.
2008, you finally had your first opportunity to get in the NCAA tournament. Bob Burton coaching the team to get in there. You know, from a media standpoint, and we talk about this as far as sports information director, you go from your normal regular stuff to wherever school you're at, and then you get into an NCAA postseason, and the game totally changes. Everything that you're doing is magnified. What do you most remember about that? And obviously, you know, you want to go as far as you can in the tournament. Usually when you're in that situation, you're going up against a really strong seeded team. But what do you take most from that really special season for Cal State Fullerton?
I just remember the joy of winning the tournament in Big West. I mean, the NCAA berth is a prize, but the tournament, they can't take that away from you. We had tied for the league championship in the regular season. That's the first time that had happened since like 1976. Even the '78 team didn't tie for the regular season. So the team had already accomplished a lot. So the tournament was just like the cherry on top of the sundae. Well, the two things I remember is one, Omaha, where they sent us. It's not like we haven't been to Omaha before, so it was kind of anticlimactic. It wasn't like you went to some new place. And it's kind of disappointing. We played the last game, and we weren't exactly the media darlings. USC was there with O.J. Mayo, so we had more Southern California media than we normally would have had. But we played like the 9:30 game in Omaha. That's past bedtime. So by the time we practiced late the night before and then played the last game, it was kind of anticlimactic. We played Wisconsin tough for a while, and Frank Robinson got some shaky foul calls, and you know, when he went out, then kind of our chances went down. Josh Okoye played a great game, kept us in it. But the most memorable thing is comparing it to going to Omaha with baseball. Baseball, even with our great success and tradition, it's a fight economically. Who can go, who can't go? You got to share this. You know, the meal money, the NCAA money pays for 35 people, and you want to take 45. So every time we go to Omaha, we lose money, which makes no sense. Compared to basketball, they say, okay, here's the plane. You got 135 seats. Bring anybody you want. It doesn't matter. You know, it's still like unlimited checkbook. You know, you get a police escort every place you go, a charter bus, facilities. It's treated like gods. Whereas the baseball team, which probably deserved it more, you're still scuffling around. People don't understand to this day. They say, "Oh, you guys make all this money in baseball." No, the more success we have, the more we lose. The only sport that makes money really is basketball, and that's the first tense we had. And we got to see firsthand how much money can be spent in that sport.
The common theme that I've always noticed about Cal State Fullerton athletics has been, you know, we're going to do it on our own mentality. You know, football needs a weight room. Well, they don't have the money for it, so literally the coaches are like going to whatever, Home Depot or wherever, getting construction. They're building it on their own.
Yeah, Jim McAllister, Tack Cat, he's up there spray painting. He looked like a Smurf, but I think it was done painting with blue paint.
But and you look at that with a lot of the other programs too. You look at the soccer program, Al Mistry making that great run in 1993, the Final Four. Judy Garman, with as long as she's been part of the softball program, they win the national title in '86. You know, Lynn Rogers, that was able to do the same for the now defunct women's gymnastics program. But it was always that sense of, it didn't matter which team it was, you know, from top to bottom. It was always that sense of, hey, we've got athletes and we'll be able to play you, and we're still equal on that playing field, even though, like you said, resources-wise, you're going up against schools that maybe sometimes have 10, 20 times the budget that Cal State Fullerton does.
Yeah, often I tell people in media on the road, they don't know much about the school, and try to get some kind of slant on thing. I said, hey, we're Division I, but we're not Division I in terms of resources. But between the lines, we got some Division I athletes, and on a given night, we can go for it. And it's been every sport has really kind of dug their own way out of mediocrity to have the highlights like you're talking about. So and that's the reward for working here. I think you know what you got to work with, so when you accomplish something, you cherish it even more. I know one year we didn't have our media guide ready for Basketball Media Day, and John Sherva was an LA Times sports writer, kind of sarcastic guy and editor, like many of the media were. We don't have them anymore. So he said, "Aren't you embarrassed that you don't have your media guide?" I go, "No, I know what we went through. I was pasting this thing up on a coffee table with a light underneath it because we can't afford to have someone set it up. So the fact that it's late, I'd just soon have it accurate and complete rather than rush it and have it not done. So no problem at all.
You've gone through a lot of administrators with you being here as long as you have at Cal State Fullerton. To me, I think the two constants that you always had here were two good friends of yours, Jerry Lloyd, who was a longtime trainer, unfortunately lost a number of years ago, and Cliff Hatter, who was the equipment manager. What did you see as far as, like, what was the reason that kept you guys here for so long? Was there anything in general, or was it just the total overall environment?
Couldn't get a job anyplace else. No, I think part of it just the fun. I mean, their nickname was Gasoline and Matches. They had that before I got here, and as soon as I saw what it was all about, the spring football game every year, Cliff would be the official coach of one team, and Jerry would coach. It was the Hatters and the Lloyds. So it was, and the players, if you ask the players, other than the coaches, Cliff and Jerry would be the guys that remember football. I mean, some guys remember me, but I'm not there in the practice field every day and not in the locker room like those guys are. So again, it's the mentality, us against the world, and some of the stuff that went on is, we can't repeat it. not terrible stuff, but some of the pranks and things we used to do. The one that stands out is Cliff Hatter imitating, they're standing in place of Gene Murphy down at LSU. TV station came, so I needed to do an interview with the head coach, and Gene was busy and he was mad about something. He says, "Cliff, you do it." So Cliff, with his Alabama accent, he talks like he's the football coach. So the game got picked up by some satellite or stuff like that. So people at home saw this video. Here's Coach Gene Murphy with his Alabama accent, and that wasn't Gene Murphy talking. So someone called Gene and gave him a hard time on it. But no, it was. We found fun. Jerry would sit in an arena, the trainer, and people. We'd be looking at a 10,000-seat arena in basketball, and they'd say, "Well, how's your gym?" "Well, ours a little bit bigger than this. We got 3 video screens. You only got 1," and he just lying through his teeth. So I think fun and enjoying each other.
Finally, the one thing we could talk about as far as athletics, if you're going to talk about one sport, obviously, that has put Cal State Fullerton on the map, has been baseball. For what Augie Garrido did from the start back in the 70s to what he was able to start, and then it carried through George Horton, Dave Serrano, and now Rick Vanderhook. What did you really see as has been the one constant for the key to success for Fullerton baseball?
I finally had to write something for the media guy because people always say, "How can you be so successful?" And coaching is the key. I mean, Augie took it from a have-not to a have. With the uniforms and we pull in Omaha and someone open up a trunk and there's batting gloves come out, flying like stuff like that. So at baseball, we are an elite program. It's the other sports that have yet to climb out of it, and you got to attribute it to Southern California. The location starts with it, but then the coaching, that was the other constant, because Southern California has been rated by pretty much every college in America to take some players, but there's enough players here, and the coaching, they've developed it over the years. Starts at youth. There's a lot of ex-Titans coaching high school and JC and even lower levels that they kind of teach the Fullerton way, and this is the only sport where we have second and third. Well, I guess we're gonna have third, but probably soon second generation players, former bat boys playing like that. So it's a tradition that got started with the coaches.
Now, there's a lot of fans probably now that don't realize that, hey, there was a time where baseball didn't have a home stadium.
Didn't have electricity.
Yeah, but for them to be able to go to Omaha, you had to go to the road to be able, and that was back in the days of the old, back in 1995, you had the 6-team regional that you had to get through. 1988, I think, if I remember, it was Mississippi State.
Yep.
Was a regional, and you had to win on the road, and it was that it didn't matter if Fullerton was #1 seed, they didn't get that luxury. So to be that was another constant thing that you saw from baseball. Is like, hey, we'll take winner take all, we'll take it wherever, even if it's at your place, we'll have to go there, but we will play our Cal State Fullerton baseball brand and we'll beat you and go to Omaha.
Yeah, there was a string there. I think 88, 90, 92, Fullerton went 4-0 3 tournaments in a row. They alternated years in those 6-team regionals, and that's just unheard of, and it's incredible. And the amazing thing is that after all those years of going on the road, and then it switched, soon as the stadium got expanded, we've been home, I think, every year but twice. So yeah, you talk about fondness, fond memories of some of those trips, going to Mississippi State and beating them twice, and then beating Texas A&M on a walk-off home run by Mike Ross. One achievement I think is the most amazing, though, was at Oklahoma State. We got beat on a walk-off or bottom of the 8th or 9th grand slam by Oklahoma State. Had to come back and win 2 games on Sunday with no pitching left in oppressive heat and humidity. I've never been in a bathtub like that, and we found a way. We had guys playing. We had a guy playing right field that never played the outfield. We had a shortstop that had like 10 at-bats all year, Christopher Malo. We had a guy named Kevin Rath. I think it was Steve Rath. There's two. We have had two Raths playing third base and never played in his life. And we got through the 10th inning somehow. A line drive right to the guy. It's one of these miracle deals. Then we won the game with a bases loaded walk-off hit by pitch, which you don't see that too often. Robert Matos took a dose, and then after the game, it was so hot. They came to us in the press box and said, okay, you get two choices here. We got the lights on and the windows open. If we turn the lights off, all the moths in Oklahoma are going to come in this window. If we don't do that, you're going to die of heat if we close the windows and leave the lights. So that was the kind of weather it was there. But yeah, that team won, and then got on a plane and found out we were playing the opening game of Omaha. It was, they since after that, Fullerton's changed a lot of rules in the NCAA, things that happened to us. So we're flying east to west and had to turn around and fly back the next day and then play the opening game. Now they got it, so they changed it so the last teams in didn't have to play that first day. So there's been yeah, some great moments.
Obviously, I'm biased. I tell a lot of people that I think the 1995 baseball team was probably one of the best of all time as far as college baseball. 57-9. Mark Kotze, the numbers that he put up, batting, 402, 21 homers, 90 RBI, and he was also the save guy, 0.31 ERA with 11 saves. The thing about that team, though, is everybody thinks, okay, it's Mark Kotze, but really when you saw the Big West Conference tournament, the regional, the World Series itself, it was really one of those teams where it was a different guy. Like Jack Jones would have a good series, DC Olson would have a good series, Brian Lloyd, with the grand slam that he hit in Omaha. That was really one of those teams where everybody really came together, and the pitching staff, obviously the ace with Ted Silva, but you had a guy, Tim Dixon, who is, Fullerton was his fourth school in 4 years, goes 13-0. John Ward, who probably saved his best game for Omaha. I mean, that was really a remarkable team.
Well, comparing teams year to year is impossible. I mean, that's why they have hot stove leagues. People spend all winter in Omaha, New Hampshire, Minnesota, wherever, talking about baseball. But that team won everything it could possibly win. Like I said, it won regular season tournament, regular season championship, the postseason tournament, the regional Omaha. So how can you not say that, how can anyone do any better than that? I don't think you can. A couple years ago, we tried to decide the top team or memorable moments and something like that. And we came up with 5 baseball teams, the 4 national champions, obviously, and then the 75 team, which is before my time. But that's the team that really got it going. They went into SC, beat USC on their Dato field. They'd only won 5 national titles in a row, and this little team in the used up uniforms comes strolling in there and beats them. That set the tone. They went to Omaha and they were gone before some teams even played, but they set the tone and got the players started to pay attention. Then '79, Tim Wallach's team got it going. That's still the first we got to give them some credit. The '84 team, like I mentioned earlier, is the insurmountable type schedule that the teams they went through, Texas and Oklahoma State, Arizona State, and that was kind of a team that was under 500 at the start of the year, and they made an infield switch, and all of a sudden it clicked. The '95 team, we say, is the best team ever published. You got to give them some credit. And the '04 team, like the '84 team, started out poorly. Chemistry changed and then had the dominance, and then to beat Coach Garrido in the finals, was an extra special memory to it.
You never want to compare, like you said, in that situation, but is there maybe 1 or 2 things now that you look back at it that maybe on a personal level, it might not be a situation where a team won or anything like that, but is there maybe 1 or 2 moments that you can look back on your years here and you go, that is what kind of represented how you felt about working here at Fullerton?
Good and bad?
I would go with good. I would go with good.
Well, the good, it's hard to pin something down, but just that whole 1984 season started. We mentioned Leon Wood, the basketball team. The team didn't do that well. They did actually better the year before, but Leon was a legitimate All-American, was on a first team Sporting News with a guy named Jordan Olajuwon, and I can't remember who else on the team. So, I mean, he was legit, made the Olympic team. We hosted the Olympics here. And then the baseball team, not then, the baseball team first won the national championship, which just stunned the heck out of me. We went there in '82 and got shut out twice. I thought I'll never be in Omaha again. The next time we go, we win the whole thing. Then the '84 football season is 11-0 or 11-1. We were nationally ranked in the top 20 UPI. We're 10-0. We beat Fresno State by a field goal and go down in the rankings. So maybe that's part of the bad. And the bad is also football. Anaheim Stadium, Saturday morning. I don't know the exact date, but 1983. I'm dressed like I am now in shorts, actually a t-shirt, unloading another one of our stories, you had to take your press box with you, basically, even though we're playing Anaheim Stadium, your ditto machines and telephones, things that you don't even use anymore, telecopiers, starting unloading the press box, and the guy comes by and says, "You ain't playing here today, son." "What do you mean? It's 9:30 in the morning, we got a game at 1 o'clock. "Yeah, the Rams, rain clause, you're not playing." "They don't play this week, they play next Sunday." "Don't matter, you ain't playing here, son." So we packed it, like 3.5 hours before game time, we find out we're not playing. That was only for the PCA championship. And we ended up moving to the Glover Stadium only because we had done it before, earlier in the season, but at least we had 24-hour notice. And that was like, okay, that's the pits. How can you do that to anybody? And then it was compounded when the Freedom Bowl said, we're going to take Iowa and Texas. They had a draw, there was a reason to pick Iowa, but they couldn't find another team that wanted to come or anything. Our own home bowl game wouldn't pick us, so we were doomed.